They are.
You're ready to start, Dennis.
We don't start till 7:15, do it?
No, it was 7 o'clock.
Okay. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with emergency ordinance number 20-A16. An emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are Linda White, Neil Means, Dottie Martin, and myself so far. I think that's a quorum, is it not? We have 6 members. Is that correct, Tori?
I believe so.
I'm going to assume it is. You've all received copies of the minutes and you've commented on them.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt for 1 second. You guys have one, two,
It looks like Betsy.
You have 8
in the attendees.
yeah, you have 8. Who,
Did you say Betsy is here?
Yeah, she just arrived.
okay, now you have a quorum.
Okay, great. So you've all received copies of the minutes and you've commented on them. So I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting, June 7th.
So moved.
Second,
Second, I probably can't do that since I wrote them.
do I have a second? Neil, did you second? All those in favor for approving the minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. The first subject in our meeting now is our discussion, we have one, of the Planning Commission public hearing, which was held on July 20th regarding Breezy Hill. Anyone like to make comments about that? We know that it went forward on a vote of 4-2. Did you all see the meeting? Were you all present? Linda was,
I was.
Neil was, Dottie was, Betsy, you saw the meeting too, right? You're muted, I can't hear you.
Yes, I did. I saw it.
Here's Mitzi. Hi, Mitzi.
Hi, Dennis.
Unmute yourself. Say something, Mitzi, so we can see if
I did. Can you hear me?
Oh. Mitzi,
I did
not
unmute
Betsy.
myself.
Mitzi. Can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
No, we can hear you. It's Mitzi, Mary Sanford.
Oh, Mitzi. Okay. Mitzi, not Betsy. Got it.
There, I think we're
You
good
got
to
it.
go.
You're good.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Dennis is calling me by my German nickname, which is Mitzi, but I'm Mary Frances legally. So that's the confusion.
Okay. Anyone want to have any comments on this or any discussion on future plans for the committee with regard to this?
I would like to make a proposal. I would like to propose that we invite Adam Moore, Kevin McDermott, and the county lawyer to our September meeting or an earlier special meeting if needed, so they can review for us in plain English the meaning of VDOT's SSAR section 30-92-60 and the corresponding guidance document. I would also appreciate an explanation of how this section applies to the Running Deer Breezy Hill connector. And ideally, we get this information before the Board of Supervisors meeting that considers the Breezy Hill rezoning. But there's an information deficit regarding this.
Linda,
Is there anyone who's not familiar with the document that Linda referred to? Raise your hand if you are not familiar.
Which, I'm not sure which.
This is this is the VDOT regulation, SSAR 30-92-60.
60.
Paragraph.
You can find it if you Google it. And in addition to that document, there's also comments on it, which is basically a summary of changes. There's a part 1 and there's a part 2. The summary of changes that are expressed in that document. The document was changed in 2011, once in 2009 and then 2011 again.
And there's also something called a guidance document.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a little bit better English, but it's not the actual thing.
Is that the section that I think Adam had cited at some point, and that it specifically is talking about addition, or what was it, addition to a network?
Right.
Yeah, so I think that is not the correct, I think he was mistaken about citing that particular paragraph. I think it's somewhere earlier on in the, I don't have the stuff in front of me, but earlier on in the SSAR thing about roads, there's just a blanket statement that they always want 2 connections if they can, and not a network addition, just a new development.
That statement is made in the SSAR. There are also conflicting statements made if you read further down concerning exceptions. And that is what I think Linda's referring to. We'd like a better definition of that. We're not qualified, I don't think, any of us, to say this is absolutely wrong or it's absolutely in conflict with what they mean. But we'd like some more expert opinions to help guide us.
Just need it translated into English.
I think it's a great idea. It's a good idea.
Yes, Linda, I had also highlighted that, and I went onto the county website and I was trying to clarify for myself, what the wording of that. So I think that's an excellent idea and I fully support it.
So with regard to logistics, Tori, how would we go about, first of all, let me step back a little. September, there's a tentative joint meeting of all CACs. How tentative is that?
I think it's pretty likely to go forward, but it's not officially confirmed yet, and it would be in later September.
Does it have to be in September? We have that later in the year when there's a possibility that we could all be, when the county would change its rules about meeting in person.
Well, we are coordinating with some external presenters as well, so it's partly based on their ability, and it may help with some of our other upcoming work as well. So it will likely still be in September.
Would that be in the first week of September when we normally have our meeting?
It would probably be later in the month, but we were planning to just do the joint CAC meeting and not have the regular additional CAC meetings. If there was interest in having this group meet as well, I'd have to check with other staff and their availability. It's kind of short notice, so I'm not sure if VDOT or Kevin and transportation planning would be available or not.
And
Yeah.
the lawyer's a big piece.
I see no reason why we couldn't have 2 meetings, have our meeting and have the joint meeting, have our meeting at a regular time in September. Let me back up a minute. What do you anticipate the schedule is for the next step in Breezy Hill? Is a county calendar for supervisors kind of filled up plate where it wouldn't go until November, December or further, or do you anticipate that it might come earlier?
I'm not 100% sure if it's been officially scheduled yet. I believe it was tentatively on for October, November, so it could be earlier than November. That's possible.
You have any input on that, Donna?
County staff usually comes to us and the chair, the vice chair, county executive, the county attorney, and what's called a pre-agenda meeting. And they start letting us know when they think things are ready, typically 3 to 4 meetings ahead. And they have not brought that up to us at this point. So I kind of defer to where Tori understands it to be in the county staff before Richardson tells us they're ready to start bringing it to the board.
Well, this group would really like to have that meeting in form of a special meeting. And I guess the next step would be to find out the availability of these people. Could staff kind of find out for us, Tori?
I can do that. I'll coordinate with the lead planning reviewer for this project as well.
We either have it at 7 o'clock or whenever their alternative times are.
Yeah, I'll see what their availability might be and how best to set up and structure that.
Okay, we're talking about, so you understand who the 3 people are that we'd like to meet with?
So that would include so maybe it's for the lead planner reviewer, Kevin in transportation planning, VDOT, and county attorney's office. And I can't guarantee that they would all be available, but I can see if it would be possible.
Okay.
I have a question. Can you find out what time they might be available, whether even an early in the day or a morning meeting? Because I really think this is such a precise issue that we need very clear-cut responses.
Yeah, I can check on that. It's a little bit of a different request since usually there's not multiple community meetings for rezoning projects. So I'll coordinate with the lead reviewer and see what the best option would be.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to weigh in on past practice. As Donna has indicated, I would say 2 months after the Planning Commission meeting would be the earliest that the board would be looking at this. There are so many other issues that the board has to address. They're still dealing with COVID as a major subject. So I would say late October would be the earliest that the board would look at this, probably more realistically November.
Well, 2 months, 2 months would be late September, right?
No, it would not be September. I cannot imagine a scenario that it would be fast-tracked into September.
It would seem like September would be a good time though, because of that. If it
Our
were
next-
September would be a good time to meet.
Our next regular meeting is supposed to be oh no, you said it was in October. Never
Yeah.
mind.
October.
Never mind.
What was your reaction, members, to the meeting? Planning committee meeting?
I thought it was pretty sorry performance.
Why do you think so, Neil?
Huh?
Why do you think so?
By the planning commission, because I think the thing clearly doesn't meet the master plan standards, and I think they ought to stick with the master plan unless they got some good reason to change it, and they didn't offer any good reason to change it. And
Some of them didn't seem to know what they were talking about.
yeah.
I mean, just following the sentence, I was going, what?
Yeah.
Betsy,
Not
you have any
Rick.
comments?
Rick was great.
Again, I thought it was voted down, and then the decision was that everyone had voted no, and that meant no, so then they reversed it. And instead of everyone voting no, 4 of them voted yes. So I was caught a little off guard by that.
They presented the question negatively. Usually, at least it's been my experience, the questions presented, you think Breezy Hill, whatever the project is, should be approved. So they presented negatively. Do you think it should be denied? I don't know whether that caused any confusion or not. Because I have no way to read their minds, but it was unusual, I'll say that. Paula, you were at the meeting, were you not?
Not all of it, no.
Okay.
I just
Um,
put 2 cents in is, my concern is that they were claiming that they can't make a profit, a reasonable profit, so they withdrew all the proffers. That was something that kind of stuck out to me.
I'll give you my impression. The Planning Commission very specifically stated at the start of the Breezy Hill project in a meeting, and has stated for quite some time, they go with net density. And they're going to consider net density. The comprehensive plan deals with net density. The land use maps deal with net density. The project was passed on by the Planning Commission at a density of 1.4 and something, which was almost 1.5. So it was 40 to 50% more dense than the net density standards set out by the Planning Commission. One of the real dangers of that I see is that portion of Breezy Hill, which was approved by the Planning Commission, recommended by the Planning Commission for approval, is not all of Breezy Hill. There are
That's
some
right.
additional lots that were not included in the application. In a question directed to the applicant in the Planning Commission hearing, he was asked if he owned those lots. He said no. He's correct. But in the community meeting we had, I specifically asked him if he was in control of those lots, and he said yes.
Yeah.
And I rather think that's because he has a contract to purchase, so he doesn't officially own them. But you can be sure he'd be involved in developing them. You also have a couple of lots at the end, which are also not developed. If a precedent is set to allow gross density or 1.49 units per acre, the other undeveloped lots could be presented in the same way. So instead of 80 units on Breezy Hill, this could go up to 90 or almost 100 units per acre. The last application that the developer had for Breezy Hill, which had been defeated, was 130. So he's getting a lot more than the 65, which would be allowed on a net density for the entire acres within Breezy Hill plot. He'd be getting closer to what he originally wanted. So those are my statements I like to have put on the record, and that's a real danger. Just by doing this piecemeal and going way above the net density, he's backing his way into a more dense community. Any comments on that?
Well, that's the way it looks to me too.
Yeah.
However, if someone applies for density over what is allowed by right, aren't proffers generally offered? And isn't affordable housing usually part of the mix?
Yes,
And
I think that was commented
were
on.
offered.
The Planning Commission.
and no affordable housing was mentioned. These
Well,
were
his comments
simply
were.
divided off, lot after lot after lot. And I got the feeling it was kind of, here it is, take it or leave it.
His comments were, as you recall, that when he gets down to that few units, he can't afford to make a profit while giving out proffers such as affordable housing. The zoning, the number of units he asked for on a gross basis were 1 unit per acre. And so the question is, the master plan talks about 1 unit per acre, but it implies, because of the land use map, 1 unit per net acre. And that's where the imbalance is. I think how does this group feel as a group if it was 1 unit per net acre that got approved?
I still have a problem with the access off of Running Deer. I'm gonna always have a problem with that.
Okay, that's a big issue, unfortunately.
Ethically and morally, it bothers me, so.
I understand.
Thank you.
I agree with Paula.
Okay. So the two issues are the net density and the access to Running Deer. Are those the two main issues we have?
I think so.
And Route 250.
And 250,
And
which is
250.
always an issue. The analysis was, whether we like it or not, is that the effect of those number of units would be minimal on traffic. But
Well,
again,
that wasn't analysis. That was just Kevin tossing off a quick characterization.
yeah, well, it's his comments, his written comments. You're right.
I think we need to have the discussion again about proffers as well. And look at how this subdivision is meeting the specific goals that we're looking to accomplish by adding housing in this area.
Yeah,
Didn't he drop all the proffers?
Mhm.
he did. He
Yeah.
did the proffers.
So what's the point in revisiting proffers if he's not going to give any?
Well, is the point of what Paul is saying is bring it up as our position.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So,
if he can't make a profit, the other developers around here have certainly been able to work out proffers things to help with some of the challenges of building in this area. And if he can't afford to do that, then maybe he has to look again at the building site, because I mean, we can't just give up safety and school capacities and residents, a buffer zone for the edge of the development area. We can't just give that up because he can't afford to do that. That's not a reasonable answer.
I think that those are all very good things. But I think those are kind of small potatoes in the bigger picture as the county sees it, not as we see it. They're important to us, but I don't think they're real important. I think it's pretty obvious they're not very important to the county.
It's real important to Running Deer. I mean, we're the
Absolutely.
edge.
Well, I'm with Paula, and I would be absolutely appalled, and I would probably be marching downtown, boycotting everything if it was my street, if I lived in Running Deer. I think that's horrible. That's absolutely horrible.
Thank you.
I think we need to list them as issues that we are still looking for resolution.
So are we,
Or a better resolution.
are we writing a letter to somebody, or what's
What's the action plan?
the action here? Yeah,
right now, we're just getting on the record. How
Okay.
we
in
feel
the minutes.
in the minutes,
Okay.
how we feel.
I have,
The problem with writing a letter about Running Deer right now is we previously said we'd like to meet with 3 knowledgeable people
Right.
so we can learn more about it. So we have to learn more about it before we start writing letters.
Yeah, we need more information.
We may not want to write letters. Okay.
I have a question because I'm still on the learning curve here. I've only lived in this area 6 years. I hope you can hear me, but I was involved. I lived up in Northern Virginia for 40 years, and I looked at what, happened there with fairly free urban development, terrible consequences. My question has to do with affordable housing. Can somebody clarify for me what the definition is of that, and whether I'm assuming it does include housing for specific needs for individuals with disabilities, disabled vets, as well as economically disadvantaged groups. So I would like some clarification on that, because I think the builders just sort of opting out, he can't afford to do that, doesn't sit right with me either.
Our understanding is that affordable housing is defined as what someone making 80, whose income is 80% of the median income of the county could afford. Once you
Okay.
get down to that, once you get down to 80%, then the question is, what is the factor? Is it 3 times your income? Is it 4 times your income? I'm not really sure of that. I do know that the median income keeps changing.
Mhm.
I think, didn't Betsy say a while ago, affordable housing was something like 272,000?
I'm
Well, the
going to
median
defer
income
to
is-
Rick on that one. I think there's affordable housing and workforce housing. So I'm
Okay.
not sure what percentage of the median income workforce housing is compared to affordable housing. Maybe Rick knows the answer to those.
The last
That would
time I looked, the median income in the county was 93,000.
Wow.
Can you give a definition, Rick, affordable housing?
The first thing I can tell you is there is no formula. You don't have a breakout by different AMIs on affordable housing the county is subscribing to, indicating that you have to have X number of units at 80% AMI, and then Y number of units at 50%, et cetera. So what exactly is the question you're looking for?
What's the definition of affordable housing in this
Affordable
county?
housing.
Well,
What's the difference
affordable,
between
for the
affordable
county,
housing and workforce housing?
yeah, the county is looking at affordable housing with an AMI of 80% and below would be affordable.
Okay.
What's AMI, Rick?
Excuse me?
Adjusted median
What's
income.
AMI?
Annual median
Median
income.
Income. Okay, thank you.
So 65. Okay. So it's purely a fixed definition.
So it has nothing to do with the price of the houses?
No. It has to do with your ability as an
Okay.
individual or family to afford a particular type of housing.
Okay,
And obviously, when you're below 50%, when you're in the 40 and 30% AMI range, you can be subject to federal programs which will help cover some of your costs, which is what we're looking at some of the construction in Southwood. The apartment buildings there, some of that housing will be federally subsidized housing.
Any other comments? Okay. Next subject is the future master plan update for the village of Rivanna. Right now, we know that the spotlight is on Crozet. There was a work session, I believe, on the Crozet master plan. I'm not sure when the village of Rivanna's master plan would come up. I've been given an indication it might be in the next year. But I think what we need to do is focus on a number of things regarding our master plan update. Number one, we have to all be educated really on what our master plan presently means, understanding it completely. The second thing is, it would be nice if we could have residents, interested residents, who would be made familiar with what our master plan means. Some of you may recall when we did our original master plan in 2010, the planning staff had community meetings, which are pretty well attended. There were over 100 people there. And we were guided through the preparation of a master plan. A lot of the input in our master plan came not only from staff, but from planning commission members who were there. I remember Marcia Joseph was one who was there. We had Thomas Jefferson, planning commission representative, who was there at our meetings. What I would like to do, particularly in this time, at this period of time, is to generate more interest among residents to participate in the master planning process by first understanding more about it. One might say, well, how really necessary how really we're going to use our master plan in the future since Breeze Hill has taken up all the rest of the property. Well, it's not. First of all, as I mentioned, there are other properties within Breezy Hill that will be applied for in the future. Secondly, although the land in between Rivanna Village and Breezy Hill is owned by certain families who've been there for quite some time, it's not saying that when those properties pass to descendants or are sold to settle estates, that land wouldn't come into play for redevelopment. Master plan presently indicates 2 units or less per acre for that piece of land. So we have net density versus gross density that hasn't been really defined. It's confusing in our master plan. And we have that all of that land which may be involved. So therefore, I need to have your views on how we would get residents involved in a master planning education. I think planning staff would certainly be willing to help us with that in terms of the education. And I think a lot of us are pretty well knowledgeable of the master plan. So I'll open the floor for comments.
Well, it's been a dream of mine, I guess, now for over a year that someday we might be able to have actual physical meetings. And so it may be that, at some point in the future, like at Rivanna, down at the fire station,
Yeah.
if the weather was nice some evening, you could have an actual meeting with some, stuff going on outside, and you might be able to get some people from that community, which now exists there, to actually come over and see what's going on. Maybe you could drum up some interest.
I don't know. I think the Zoom meetings are pretty effective. I mean, I go to meetings I normally wouldn't have gone to if I had to drive into town. And right now, I think we have 19 participants. We never had that many people at a VORCAC meeting.
Well,
that I recall.
when Rivanna Village was a big issue, when there were a lot of things going on, we used to get pretty good attendance.
Yeah, when we did the last master plan, we had some pretty big meetings. And
Yeah.
for some of the,
Well,
we've had
that was a
some big
long time
meetings.
ago.
Yeah.
I believe there are people who are uncomfortable with Zoom meetings, uncomfortable with getting onto Zoom. Maybe
There's no
confused
reason we can't,
how to do it.
there's no reason we can't have both. We can have in-person Zoom
That's right.
at the same time.
Right.
So that affords everybody an opportunity to participate how they wish.
I think some kind of public education, public forum, whether it's by Zoom and available on YouTube to look at later, or whether it could possibly be in person. I think that's essential. How do you educate the community? I think also, how do we target the younger people who are moving in to our communities and our future stakeholders in the environmental control of this area? And, many of the younger families I see moving in are the age of my children, in their 40s and close to 50. And they are very comfortable with using virtual meetings. I think it's my age group that maybe is not as comfortable with virtual meetings, but they know that they can click on, they can review it anytime they want, they can go back to it. So I think these are all sort of viable options to consider. But I think getting some message out to the younger stakeholders in our communities, and also to the newer residents of Rivanna Village, and maybe even messages out through, I don't know, other, community groups to the wider community, to really generate that investment, that future investment. I don't have any concrete examples, beyond that virtual meeting, in-person meeting, education, future stakeholders.
Dennis, have you ever contacted the Rivanna Village HOA?
I tried, but it was confusing at the time. I think that a good point is brought up by Mary Mitzi. I call her Mitzi.
Mitzi.
A good point is brought up because there's more than one way to communicate and to
Right.
educate. We can do it with forums. We can do it with postings explaining the master plan. But it's always valuable that people have questions when you're doing one-way communication to follow up with having two-way communication so you can answer questions. So we can do it a number of different ways. Bringing up Rivanna Village is a very important point because I feel they've been kind of isolated, and it's because it's difficult to give them flyers. There's always one set of mailboxes. You don't know who to contact. And so what I'd like to do is ask, I do know that the HOA is controlled by the developer,
Yeah, at this point,
but the developer. I need volunteers to try to contact the developer to find out how to get in contact, explaining our purpose and how we get in contact with people who live in Rivanna Village to get them into the fold. It's always a silence when I ask for volunteers.
Is it still
what-
Tim Culpepper?
Yeah, Tim Culpepper would be the first one to contact.
Yeah.
And
Dennis, I would volunteer for that if you would kind of direct what I need to, the action plan, what I need to say and do.
okay. Anybody else want to work with Mitzi?
I can do that.
Thank you, Linda.
and I'll help them too if they need it.
The question we would ask, I think, Betsy, if anyone has the contact for Tim Culpepper would be Betsy. She's our master research person. She never throws away anything.
I have his email address.
Okay,
I think I have a phone number.
so what we would ask, we would express our problem. The problem is we'd like to get in contact with people from the Rivanna Village community. We'd like to explain what WARCAC is about. And we'd like to then get them involved in attending meetings through Zoom, how to get on Zoom, how to contact us. And then going on from there, the master plan, but not giving them too much. First is how to get them involved with the Village Rivanna Community Advisory Committee.
Or even just let them know we exist.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Lynn can help you with what I can't help you with.
I would think the developer has an email list.
Well, as I said, let's try it and see what happens. See even if he's ready to share it with us. Okay,
Well, he doesn't have to share it. You can just give him the info and ask him to send it out. If he doesn't feel comfortable in sharing it, which he probably won't, which is fine.
so we have two things kind of going on, getting new members or getting other people involved and going on and figuring out how to get the master plan preparation rolling. There's a lot of changes I think that would be suggested in the master plan when it comes up. The transportation part has to be redone to be more
Realistic.
definitive and specific and less ambiguous. Certainly the density question has to be answered. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Dennis, I'd like to go back to ways of getting people involved.
Certainly, Paula, good.
I think that we could all be tasked with thinking of people that we know that we might want to approach on a one-on-one level. People feel good about being asked to participate in something. And I'm sure each of us know at least one person that may come to mind as somebody that would be good for this project. Also, what about, I'm brainstorming, I might be going out of the box. I've been on the road for 9 hours, I'm a little crazy. even hosting groups of people, in your home that might be candidates.
COVID,
So if they get more information.
I don't think you can, I don't think you can do that. Good idea, but I don't think you can do that because of COVID.
Is that a law? Or, I mean, I host people in my house and we're distanced and we're clean and they're comfortable. They come of their own free will. So,
I just happen to have a list of the 300 people who sent in emails on Breezy Hill. The last time we had a mass email mailing on Breezy Hill. So those people who sent in emails, I think, are people who are probably interested in some form.
and those could be written, that could be a written. We noticed you
Yeah.
exhibited interest in the past. We're looking for people who are wanting more information, or having a Zoom session, outdoor picnic, whatever you want to feel the safe and people will come to. I think the point I'm making is that the invitation aspect, I think, can be a successful one.
I think all of these options, all of these strategies, anything that will drum up, I think they're all very good. Having just come back from a day of volunteering in a medical setting, I want to tell you, I came back and immediately said to my husband, my anxiety about COVID returning is increasing. And I think we are probably going to move into another, I don't know, I can't predict, but I think we're probably going to move into another few months of a lot of restrictions. And so face-to-face meetings may be hard.
Worked around that
You know,
before.
for
We'll just,
people.
we'll roll with it as it goes, anticipating.
Roll with it as it goes. Absolutely.
Roll with it,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I need to make some assignments or have volunteers. For every task, I need participants. So if we talked about, and we named people we're going to try to approach Rivanna Village. I need another group that's going to come up with specific action steps we can take to get more people who aren't necessarily in Rivanna Village involved. The question is involvement. People get involved generally when they see there's a threat to their community, That kind of motivates some people. Some people aren't motivated that way, but certainly this group is. So what I want to do is get away from just talking about things in meetings and have things happen between meetings.
Well, I'm happy to work on a group of inviting the one-on-one, inviting people to become involved. We would also need to discuss with that group of people who would be with me. I think one or two other people would be required, is how we're going to do that. What is the best means? And then
I want to make a comment for y'all. You cannot have 3 people together. That's considered a meeting. It's for your, it has to be posted.
we can't have a committee.
No, we're not doing committee meetings right now. And they're not doing anything in person. They're going to talk about it in the end of September at the Board of Supervisors meeting to see kind of where the numbers are with the Delta variant. So
Thank you for that. I asked that earlier, so I appreciate.
Carolyn, is there anything that would prevent a member of this committee joining with someone who isn't on the committee to try to get more members?
You and Joe Smith down the street can meet for coffee all day long.
There you go.
What about Joe, Jane, and Ginny?
As long as
If you're not on the committee, you can do it.
one committee member and 7 people are fine.
Great.
If I'm wrong, Rick or Donna, please correct me, but as long as you only have 1 committee member and 7 neighbors, you're fine.
But not 2 committee members, or is 3 the cutoff?
3 is the cutoff. You cannot, you've got to be very careful, because say you and Dennis meet at Starbucks and that just happens to show up, that can be considered a meeting, even though it wasn't planned that way. It could be considered a meeting because you're all three on the same committee. And like,
I'm just gonna
If you
repeat
discuss business.
I'm going to repeat again, 2 committee members can meet with 7 non-committee members, and that's okay.
yes,
But 3 committee members and 7 non-members is not.
Right.
Three committee members, regardless of who else may be there. If you're discussing Village of Rivanna CAC business, that is a meeting. And you have to meet public meeting requirement notices and meet FOIA responsibilities. So 3 is a no-no.
Okay.
But 2 is allowed.
Yes. 2 is allowed with any number of non-members.
Okay, then I would ask that one other person join me from this committee in looking for identifying various methods and then creating action steps that we share with the rest of at an open meeting.
Mitzi is involved already. Linda's involved already.
I'll work with you, Paula. We'll
Okay,
talk.
Thank you.
Okay.
You know, it seems to me like we're talking about a lot of minute things when the whole picture is really the whole net versus gross density business. The Board of Supervisors doesn't support it, or at least they don't discuss it. It hasn't been brought up, so it hasn't been, so who knows? And until that happens, until they take a definitive step, there's no point in us beating it to death. What do you think, Donna?
I think it is an issue that needs to be discussed with the board.
But they vote, you've talked about that for a long time. I mean, I don't mean you, I mean the board in general, but they never do it.
Do what?
Discuss net versus gross and which one you're going to go with. There is contradictions in the master plan, the comp plan, and, you know, make a decision, which one are you going to go with?
Well, my understanding is that while it may not necessarily be in the plans, that there was an understanding among the board as a result, and Rick, I'm sure, can remember the name of the specific situation that came up.
Okay.
Did agree. I think the issue is that agreement may not be documented as clearly as it needs to be. And that needs to be, clarified and documented.
What did they agree on?
I think I'm going to ask if Rick wouldn't mind, since he was on the board when that came up.
The application that's important here is Adelaide. And Adelaide, Adelaide. Adelaide was a proposed residential community that was going to be going in west on 250, west of the intersection or of where the Harris Teeter is. And originally, I think it was proposed, my memory would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 109 residential units were to go in. And the neighboring community immediately to the east was concerned, number one, about, thank you, Cully. The residential community to the east was concerned about the density and, most importantly, the impact on 250 traffic in the morning. And therefore, they opposed it. The discussion we had with the developer, who subsequently put in the Albemarle business complex on Fifth Street extended successfully after, I think, 3 planning commission meetings. So he seems to love planning commission meetings. Anyhow, that there was discussion about lowering the density, and Pam, Riley, and I met with him, and we tried to urge him to come up with a figure that would be greater than the 35 units that would be by right, but it would be below the 67 units that he was advocating for. So we were trying to find a sweet spot where he could still go ahead and make a profit, that there would therefore be some increased density. It wouldn't be all by right. And we met with him, we talked with him, we urged him to think about it, and he resubmitted with the 1 acre zoning, which was, the property was already R1. So he went ahead and put through an application that was an R1 application, and the board then approved it. So during that discussion, there was active debate as to, he submitted that gross density should apply. And several of us, I think I can say commissioners, supervisor's name, Supervisor Malik and Supervisor Palmer and myself, all three of us maintain that really what was operational there was net density, not gross density, because we felt, given the nature of the site, there were slopes, there were, I think, a stream that ran through there, an intermittent stream. And he also wanted to have open space. And then, of course, there were going to be roads. We felt very strongly that those elements should all be deducted from the gross density, and that net density should be the figure that was used to determine development. So I thought we had a precedent case with Adelaide, and we talked about it at the time, that this was going to be kind of our operating yardstick when we looked at developments going forward. So what can I say? The developers count on transitions of supervisors to exploit a lack of up-to-date information and past precedent, and to advocate for certain positions. They count on that. They play to that to their advantage. And, you know, that, I think that's part of what came up here, because not that they were playing on Donna, but they were certainly playing in terms of a new supervisor in the Rivanna district. I will say, however, that the past supervisor for the Rivanna district had voted for Adelaide at the higher level of density. And I think that the board decision was a 3-3 decision. And that's part of the reason why the developer ended up having to reconfigure his application. And then he came up with the R1 zoning of 36, 37, 38 units, somewhere in that neighborhood. And that's what was built. You drive out there today, and that's what that is there.
Well, if that was the precedent, then why is this developer trying to use gross?
He's using it because of the confusion between the comprehensive plan and the master plan.
And Albemarle County Code.
But I thought that what you just said was, with this Adelaide development, you all came to a sort of an agreement
We did.
that
we
that
did.
was the way to go.
Well, the other thing I will say, and Tori will, I think, echo this, the person who was responsible for that application at Adelaide, Elaine Eccles, who was the staff member who, as a senior planner, was responsible for all of the master plans. She retired, and she was very clear about supporting net density. But Elaine went out the door, retired, took off as a globetrotter around the world. I hope she got in 2 years of good travel before COVID hit. A wonderful person and a great colleague. I enjoyed immensely working with Elaine and learned a lot from her, but she was not around any longer to be able to make that point and back up that argument. And There are other members of the planning staff. We've transitioned from the director of planning, the director of community development, the director of planning has transitioned over the course of the last 2.5, well, now 3 years. So we've had changes in staffing, and that's also, I think, played a role here.
And if
So
I
do we
may add-
need something like a resolution on the part of the Board of Supervisors saying this is the way we're going to do it?
Well, I think one of the complications is that precedent in this sense is different than precedent in common law appellate decisions. Appellate court decisions have precedence and are binding upon lower courts within that circuit. An administrative determination of precedence does not have the same binding legal effect. And I don't know whether this board, and I'm not saying positively or negatively, I'm simply stating, I do not know whether this board would want to make that more of a binding precedent. I just can't answer that question, but I do believe that this conversation is something that county staff can take and will apply in their analysis and in the report that they will give to the Board of Supervisors when this comes up before us. And that will be a way to remind people of the quote precedent close quote, that appeared to have been set from the Adelaide. And Rick, I so appreciate your corporate memory on those sorts of details. The thing that is important, even if it were a more binding precedent, is you have to look at the particular underlying facts of each situation in determining whether that precedent would apply. And so even if you did have a more legalistic precedent, the courts, they do look to see what the facts of this case, how do they differ from the facts of the case where that precedent was set. And very often they would reach a different decision because they would find the underlying facts of the case before them at that time to be sufficiently different from the facts when the quote precedent, close quote, was set, that even then it's not necessarily as absolute as you might anticipate.
Listen, the 2000, did you want to say something?
No, I just was saying that I think that clarification is very helpful and important.
Look, the 2015 comprehensive plan very clearly, specifically speaks to the ambiguity between the net density that they talk about in the comprehensive plan and the Albemarle County Code. And they urged that that be resolved. That was 2015, and I'm not going to get off this horse. That was 6 years ago. And the county Board of Supervisors have done nothing about it. If you look at the Albemarle County Code, it's very general when it talks about density. It tells about how to calculate units, and it just says acreage and units, and doesn't specifically talk about net density. So you have a comprehensive plan on one hand, which we all treasure, and you have the code, which then makes it nebulous. And I cannot understand. I could draw up a new paragraph dealing with that in 15 minutes. It doesn't take that long. It's one sentence or two sentences. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why this hasn't been addressed. It would take care of everything. It would at least put it to a vote. Either Board of Supervisors would want to do it or not want to do it, but at least would settle the question. This way we go year after year with individual supervisors' interpretation of this. And I know sometimes politicians strive by ambiguity because it gives them more flexibility. But this needs to be settled. It comes up time and time again.
Well, I do think the nature of the beast in that, supervisors cycle in and cycle out. And I think, that, and I hope they appreciate that we sit here on this committee trying to help them and remind them that this has been an issue again and again. And I think I would hope that they would take it as it's given in that it's caused frustration for us, so it must cause frustration for them as well. And I think that providing a sample paragraph along with, Donna's certainly going to be taking information back with her when she speaks with her peers. And I think it's worthwhile to bring these issues up again and again because of the nature that, they're in, they're out, and
I'd like to see you bring it up,
Coming
Don,
in.
at least to bring the thing up, to have it discussed.
absolutely. And I would hope that they would look at it as helpful, that we're trying to remind them of things that we deal with again and again, that they deal with again and again, the planning commission deals with again and again. So I think that's part of our role to bring it up again and again.
And you are, and again, Tori will, as part of the notes from this will be part of the conversation and the report that county staff will be preparing on this application. But it also will be more general information towards revisions of county documents. I do think that, every board meeting or every few board meetings, we get new sections of county codes and ordinances and plans that are being revised. So it's not that no action is being done, it's just that there is a tremendous amount of work that is being done. And I guess we all have particular areas that we wish were a little higher on the priority than others, but this will be part of the discussion that will come back to the board.
Now, I just want a clarification. This will be part of the discussion that comes back to the board. Are you talking about the discussion from this meeting or the discussion from this
Yeah,
CAC?
I think the discussion from this meeting, Cory,
Okay.
will be, I believe or expect this would be what is the part of the county's analysis when they do their report on this application when it comes back before the board. I think that's what part of this is all about. Is we have community meetings, we have planning commission meetings, we have CAC meetings, and all of the information is part of what goes into the analysis that comes to the board when an application reaches us for a decision.
So from this meeting, Tori will be including some of these facts as she passes them along to the Board of Supervisors? Is that what you're saying?
Through the county staff as part of their report, yes.
So part of
Tori.
comments from this meeting.
Well, I mean, I don't know exactly what format it will take, but clearly what is being discussed now, county staff is here and they are hearing and very much aware of this part of the discussion. So yes, I would expect this will be part of what will come to us as part of the analysis.
I have a question.
Can I just clarify that for the staff report that the Board of Supervisors will see, there will be a paragraph in there about the Village of Rivanna discussion that has just probably taken place this evening. And there should be some update after the Planning Commission meeting to provide some insight for the board as to the reaction of the Village of Rivanna CAC. You will all serve as the eyes and ears of the supervisors, and therefore your input is valued by the supervisors. So there will be some way that that is included within the text that is the package that each supervisor will see about Breezy Hill.
Yes.
Can I just add something to the discussion? Just an observation that I think it's also very important in communicating to the board that this committee is solution focused and not just a critical body. And I like some of the examples that have come up tonight. Dennis said something about it. I could put two sentences together that would be a solution to the questions or the criticism or the argument that we have about this. And I think that's very important. There has to be a lot of give and take on both sides as we are proceeding to something that will meet both the builders' requirements, but also the community requirements. But I really think solution focused, relationship is important to establish. And I just want to add that in.
And could I add one other thing also? And that is, in addition to what we discuss here tonight, what you discuss, I mean, Rick and I are here more to listen than to speak, but also remember that every time there is a public hearing, there is unlimited opportunity for people to speak up to 3 minutes. In addition to, and separate from that, at every board meeting, both at 1 o'clock and at 6 o'clock, we set aside a time for matters from the public for items that are not on the agenda. And so if there is something very important, for example, this net versus gross density, there's an opportunity twice every board meeting for members from the community to call in and tell the board, this is something that we think you should have been working on and gotten resolved. It's been a problem. It's coming up again, and clarify, that this net density is an important issue. The board does listen. When I was running for office and I was attending every board meeting, it became very clear to me as a spectator, which sometimes it's easier to see when you're not actually in the middle of it, that there were topics that were of interest to the public, and a sufficient number of people brought it up that the supervisors clearly were getting the message that that was something they needed to look into. Now, I cannot tell you that every single time the board will agree with what certain members of the public may say, but they do listen. And so take advantage of all your opportunities, your community meetings, your CAC hearings, but also matters from the public, not on the agenda for a public hearing. Twice every board meeting, there's an opportunity for people from the community to be heard.
Does the board, I like to ask Tori, does the board, when we finish our meetings and minutes then are produced, does the Board of Supervisors get individual access to every CAC's minutes, or they go to get them on the county website the same as everybody else does?
I believe just available on the county website, but all of the CAC meetings are available for anyone who wants to go and take a look. But I do want to clarify a couple of other things as well. So for the land use analysis that staff did with the comprehensive plan for Breezy Hill, that's already in the staff report. So that's been done. And then the Planning Commission did their review. And so all of that is passed on to the board. So there's not an additional staff analysis of this project, the comp plan. It's up to the board to look at what staff said in the staff report and what the commission said. So as far as discussions from this meeting that have happened since then, I think those could be included. I don't know what the best place would be, perhaps a transmittal summary or in staff's presentation, but the staff report is complete. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So unless an individual board of supervisors goes to the website and looks up this particular CAC meeting, they will not know any of this. Is that correct?
Well, that's one of the things that I have a responsibility to carry back some information from these, but let me be candid. It is simply impossible for an individual supervisor to keep up with every communication, every CAC meeting that takes place in the county. Each of us are on about a dozen of them ourselves. And so there is absolutely no human way possible for any supervisor to keep up with every single meeting that takes place in the county. It's extremely difficult simply to keep up with the emails that come in every day, much less go and read every report that may be out there. So we do get, I mean, the binders we get every other week is about 2 inches, 3 inches thick of reading materials just for each meeting. So there are limitations on how much information we're able to actually, go through and keep.
So the only information from this particular meeting, aside from the minutes that'll be available in a week or so on the website, is anything that gets from you. As Tori said, their part's already done, staff is already done. So anything we might get from you, that's the only other additional?
Well, I'm not going to say it's the only other, but yes, I will be bringing some information back to the board, in particular about the gross versus net density issue.
Thank you.
Most of the other items that thanks. I think most of the other items we've discussed have been part of the discussion on Breezy Hill from the very beginning.
Thank you.
So what I
Both
heard,
both the
Go ahead.
board meeting and the planning commission meetings end with an opportunity for members of the commission or the board to share with their other colleagues any discussions that have arisen in committee meetings or sessions that they have participated in. So that would give Donna an opportunity to report back to the board at the end of the next board meeting what had transpired with the CAC meeting. And it would gives me an opportunity to report next Tuesday to the planning commission at the end of the planning commission meeting that we had this discussion about net versus gross density yet again.
And I can imagine the frustration we have. You people must be dealing with the same types of frustration. So I think we have a common goal here.
remember, there are two ways to communicate, as Donna mentioned. There's nothing to prevent at the start of any meeting that the Board of Supervisors has for anyone who wants to talk about matters not on the agenda to speak of this. The other way is to send an email. You can send an email to every single supervisor if you wanted to. They're all listed on the county website. Or individuals in the community could do the same thing. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Any other comments on this before we go to old and new business?
Just brainstorming. I'm just thinking of Paula's idea of having an in-home meeting maybe could be linked with Donna's recommendation that call into the board is much more powerful than any other way, and much more influential and more likely to be noticed. And maybe Paula, you could arrange that.
I'm not sure. First of all, I think our clerk told us that in-person meetings are not taking place right now, correct?
Correct.
So
Yeah,
that,
Carolyn said that.
yes.
Okay.
No, but at the start of every Zoom meeting that the Board of Supervisors has, you can sign up to talk
Right.
and you can speak at the
Okay.
Zoom meeting.
So I was trying to get Mitzi to rephrase what it was she was suggesting for me.
Well, as I understood it, you had thought that one thing you might do was be to invite people who were both interested in or could become stakeholders or future members of CAC to something in your home in person where, it did not constitute a subcommittee or a meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking if out of that group, that focus group, you had people that you could educate about with an example of the gross versus net density issue that is of concern, and say, for example, and here is one thing that we could do as a group, and whether you could, have folks call in or,
Yeah, and as far as that idea goes, I was just throwing out brainstorming, but I was calling to action each of us to think about people who we have associations with that we might reach out to on a one-on-one basis, by phone, by Zoom, by text, by however you feel comfortable and want to reach out. But I'm suggesting we all think about people that we could contact as we go about our daily lives and see if they're interested. Express to them the need for more people being informed. And I think that's kind of a responsibility of each of us. But Dottie and I will talk about it and maybe come up with some ideas of suggestions of how to make it easier, or maybe we'll hold you accountable to everybody speak to one person. Who knows? You'll have to wait and see.
Good.
And just so y'all know, I just sent a note to our clerk and asked her to annotate we get a script for our meetings that I want to bring up the net versus gross density calculation at the committee reports for our meeting on the 18th. This will take place at the end of the board meeting.
Thank you.
So I have already taken action to ensure that that is a topic of discussion at our next board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Old and new business. Any old business that anyone would like to bring up? New business. Anyone have any new business? Okay. Planning Commission, Commissioner and Board of Supervisors liaisons. Reports, anything you'd like to say? You know, what was said already. Rick, why don't you start off?
I'll start off. I don't really think I have anything to add at this point. So I'll turn it over to Donna. What I will say, I did note with great interest the coverage in the Daily Progress of the board's discussion last Wednesday about middle density residential land use category. And there was a immediate letter in there in response to the Daily Progress article that was written by a member of the Crozet CAC who tried to compare their issue with the master planning process of Albemarle County with the Breezy Hill application. And I would just counsel anybody who may be contacted by members of the Crozet CAC as they seek to minimize this new zoning category of middle density residential, which, by the way, would be proposed throughout the county. It's not as though Crozet alone would have this kind of zoning designation. But anyhow, you may be contacted by other members of Crozet who are seeking to argue that there is a parallel and that there is symmetry between what they want to accomplish and what we just talked about in terms of the Village of Rivanna master plan. Be mindful, we have a master plan right now for the Village of Rivanna, and they're looking in Crozet at updating a master plan with significant growth that has taken place in Crozet. And at the same time, deep-seated concern about the demographic imbalance in the western end of the county versus the demographic heterogeneity in the, for example, the high schools in the northern end of the county and in the southern end of the county. And therefore, I don't think that there is a rough equivalence between these two issues whatsoever. So I would just ask you to think very, very carefully if you're asked to weigh in, to think about it, and feel free to talk with Donna or me about it, because there are multiple layers to this onion as it gets peeled back, involving middle density residential zoning in Crozet and the Crozet master plan. So that's the only thing I'll add. And I'll turn it over now to Donna on behalf of the chair.
Donna, please.
Thanks, Rick. You know, and I think an important thing to recognize is that, you know, and I say this because I truly believe it. We on the county, on the Board of Supervisors, county staff, the Planning Commission, I think I can speak for everyone. We all very much value, respect, desire, and to the greatest extent that we possibly can, want to be able to meet what our local communities desire for their area. At the same time, recognizing that as supervisors, we have responsibility for the overall comprehensive plan and development of the county. And one of the things that we have to be careful of is not allowing each individual area to say, as I've actually heard at Board of Supervisor meetings where people have literally said, we support, for example, affordable housing, we just don't want it near us. And so we, the Board of Supervisors, have county-wide responsibilities, and we really have to have a blend of what we determine, because we are your elected officials, based upon the input we get, but also on the plans the county has, what can best meet our overall comprehensive goals within the county. And that does mean in some areas that we have to have things like affordable housing. Now, one of the things that's important, I believe, when you talk about affordable housing is not just the house itself, but the things that are necessary to support people being able to live in that. So if it comes to something like affordable housing, there also has to be decent transportation. Very often the people whose financial ability limits them to the affordable housing market do not have their own private transportation. So it makes no sense for us to develop or install an area of affordable housing where people cannot then get from home to work. And those are some of the complexities we deal with. And Rick Randolph is really an expert in understanding those complexities with both his previous planning commission, board of supervisors, planning commissioner again, as well as the previous years of experience he has in local government and development. And that actually literally is what I've heard at some meetings. You know, we support affordable housing, we just don't want it next to us. And from a county standpoint, it won't work if we don't put it somewhere. But where we want to put it are in places where it actually makes sense. I want to follow up on a couple of things related to the pandemic. And some comments were made this evening about, you know, these in-person meetings. Well, back at the beginning of June, I was very optimistic in where things were going, not only nationwide, but in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and particularly in our county and our region. Numbers were really low, vaccination rates were really high, and unfortunately now we have that Delta variant that is extremely contagious, infectious, with easily spread. And what I am observing is we have a smaller pool or segment of the population that is not vaccinated, that is experiencing an even higher rate of infection than the overall county had at the very beginning of the pandemic, before widespread vaccinations were taking place. I just saw a news report this evening that 99.9% of individuals who are fully vaccinated are not experiencing what they call a breakthrough infection from the Delta variant, which means literally, or virtually, if not almost literally, every person being infected today and getting sick from the Delta variant is part of that 30-40% of the population that has not been vaccinated. Unfortunately, what that means is, whereas in June, we were talking with county staff about moving back in probably early October, having a hybrid, which would be both live for the supervisors and those who want to come into county office building, virtual for those who want to and can access our meetings that way. Today, we went back to a mask mandate in the building. We are no longer looking at September, October as being a great time to relax things further and go back to in-person meetings. And there was an article in the Daily Progress today, and I got to tell you that we've had a lot of discussions amongst the board and the county staff today. That article did not accurately reflect the position of the county as it relates to vaccinations and things like that. We are still working on that. You know, a few months ago, it was my impression, my understanding that there were not vaccination mandates because the vaccinations we're using are still under emergency authorization use. But just within the last few weeks, last month, we've seen many corporations. The state of Virginia has announced that, you know, all state employees have to be vaccinated. Today, Department of Defense said by September 15th, all military personnel will be vaccinated. And so that article in the Daily Progress today was really either taking some things out of context, out of historical context, and putting them into some sort of a current policy. And there's going to be some clarification come out. But, you know, we are back into a major surge right now. And I'm starting to wear my mask again back in public. I'm fully vaccinated, have been since the middle of February. But we've got to take this serious again. And I just want people to be prepared, be aware that, I'm not telling you what the decisions will be because we haven't reached that stage yet. But, we're not, today I am not at all in favor of relaxing and going back into in-person meetings. Now, the complication is, for many people, in-person meetings are not convenient. Linda, you mentioned, you can attend a lot more meetings this way rather than having to drive into town. South Albemarle right now, we don't have internet for so many.
Yeah.
CenturyLink has decided they've sold out their network in 20 states. They're not putting any money into going from copper to broadband. I have a lot of people in South County who have no internet access. So virtual meetings are a no-go, a non-starter for them. On the other hand, we've got people where going to meetings in person is non-starter. You got young kids, you got to feed them, bathe them, get them ready for school tomorrow. You don't have time to go in. So the county had expended a great deal of time, effort, and financial resources to being ready to go into a virtual hybrid, live virtual hybrid type of a meeting. But right now I'd say, if someone asks me, we're not going back into live. We're not going hybrid. I have to stick with the virtual meetings. Now, another thing to understand is that the county operates under a different legal regimen than some other entities. And so the county had an emergency ordinance that was enacted during the statewide emergency. The governor brought the statewide emergency to an end at the end of June. But by law, our emergency ordinance can continue for an additional 6 months with a possible 6-month extension after that. I'm not trying to say we're going to go a whole nother year, but until we feel it is safe, at least again, one supervisor speaking, I'm not going to be voting in favor of relaxing and going back to in-person meetings until I feel people can really be safe. And even if you're vaccinated, as I am, I'm not so concerned about me getting infected and getting seriously ill. Again, 99.9% of those in the situation are not facing that risk. What I do face and what is real is that I could be a carrier and I could spread it to someone else who's not vaccinated. So I'm going to try and do my part to help other people wear my mask, and people need to get their vaccinations. And so that really is probably the big issue that I've got right now. If you have any questions about that or anything else, be happy to try and answer, or if I can't answer tonight, get an answer for you.
So no questions for Donna. Again, is there any new business that you'd like to bring up?
None by me.
Scott? Tori, I see that in the notes here you gave me that we say to say the next meeting is tentatively scheduled as a joint CAC meeting. I can't say any more than that because I'm not sure what's going on. So opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting will be posted at a later date in accordance with emergency ordinance number 20-A16 and open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Need a motion to adjourn the meeting and a second.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Thank you, Dennis.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.